movie, but not that particular phrase,
Okay.
or I don't remember it. So that doesn't mean anything. My memory's bad right now.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. Hello. Hello. Come on in. Come on in. We're super excited. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us for today's conversation on visibility, creative expression, and storytelling. And before I continue, let me just say my name is Shambria, and I will be the moderator and the host for today's session. So let me just put that on out there. As we celebrate Pride Month and reflect on the enduring impact of HIV advocacy, we're exploring how stories shape the way communities are seen, understood, and supported. Today's conversation brings together leaders who work demonstrates the power of narrative to challenge stigma, build community, preserve wisdom across generations, and create space for voices that have often been overlooked. And before we begin, drop one word in the chat that comes to mind when you hear the word visibility. Again, drop one word in the chat if you're joining us today that represents or when you come to mind when you hear about visibility. Again, my name is Shambria, and I'm honored to join the incredible leaders whose work reflects the power of storytelling, advocacy, and authentic expression. Being said, I am going to go on and introduce our lovely panelists. First, we have Kimberly Skeet, is a playwright, healthcare professional, advocate, and community leader whose work centers the power of storytelling, visibility, and authentic representation. Through writing and creative expression, Kimberly explores the complexities of identity, resilience, and community while helping to challenge stereotypes and expand conversations around HIV, healthcare, and belonging. Her work demonstrates how personal stories can become powerful tools for connection, healing, and social change. Next, we have Latoya Murchison. Is the host of Toya's Quiet Storm, a best-selling author, champion of change, and storyteller whose work draws from her lived experience of living with HIV. Through writing, media, and advocacy, Latoya creates spaces for honesty, healing, and empowerment while helping others find strength in their own stories and voices. Last but certainly not least, we have Vanessa Johnson, is co-executive director and co-founder of Ribbon, a center of excellence. Her work is grounded in organizational development for social impact, trauma-informed and healing-centered care, HIV harm reduction, entrepreneurship, and disclosure interventions for people living with HIV. Through Ribbon, Vanessa helps create innovative programs that addresses stigma, strengthen community, and support healing. Her work includes Common Threads, a trauma-informed intervention designed to reduce stigma, foster connection, and support Black women living with HIV in sharing their stories and experiences on their own. With that being said, we have an amazing panelist before you all today. You've heard the bios, and I think it is safe to say it is time to get into some conversations and some questions. Now, before we really get into the meat and the potatoes, I just have this feeling. I don't know if you all know the reference, but there is a movie, of course, and it's back in the 90s, and it's called Brown Sugar. And the main thing was, when did you fall in love with hip hop? So I would like to ask our panelists to reflect on their relationship with storytelling. And this could be for anybody. When did you fall in love with storytelling? And Latoya, I can kick it off with you.
I fell in love with storytelling after being in the hospital and they thought I was having a heart attack. So I used that situation to inspire other people to one, keep a track of your health, two, advocate for yourself, and three, just be you. Don't be afraid to say who you are or share your different experiences. Your story can help someone that you may not even know.
Thank you. I definitely agree. Vanessa?
Hi, yes, thank you. I appreciate the question, and I'm glad to be with you all today. I would say there was two incidents. One when I was a child, living in the projects in Southern California, Los Angeles, and they would bring the mobile book units around. and there would be storytellers that would gather the kids in the neighborhood, and that was always a joy to behold and look forward to. And the second, I would say, was my being a woman living with HIV and becoming totally bare butt naked in front of a group of black folks in Chicago that were saving the lives of black women in Chicago. And in that nakedness, I allowed was the first incidents where I really allowed people to help clothe me, to help me bring me back. And I remember that. And I remember that. That must be a feeling that a lot of people want.
No, thank you so much, Vanessa and Latoya, for sharing that. And when you all share your sentiments and your story, it made me think about the power of being vulnerable in spaces. When you think about, of course, Latoya, you're being in a hospital setting, and then Vanessa, you're being, around individuals like unclothed. So I know that is an element of vulnerability. So when did you realize in all of that stories have the power to change how people see themselves, their communities, and or the world around them? And Vanessa.
Mm, so when I hear the phrase of the theme of this today's session, voices in motion, I think about stories that refuse to stay still. I refuse to stay still. I refuse to stay quiet. I can remember struggling with other women living with HIV about whether or not we should disclose our status or not. For me, and I will say for me, it was paramount that I say something because for years, as folks who have done Common Threads realize, we carry a whole lot into an HIV diagnosis. It's not a clean slate. We're bringing our lives and ourselves. And so our voices carry us from shame to power, from isolation to belonging, from merely surviving to shaping what happens to us from this day on that we decide that we're not going to let people just take us for granted anymore.
Thank you, Latoya.
For me, visibility means, like Miss Vanessa said, not staying quiet, being a voice for the voiceless, and like with my podcast, I like to use that for visibility to give people the opportunity to be authentic, tell their stories in a space where they wouldn't be able to tell somewhere else.
Absolutely. I definitely agree when it comes down to being visible, when it comes down to being open and transparent, especially with your community, is very impactful. And I want to reference to Kimberly to say, Kimberly, I got to ask you before we continue to keep going. When did you fall in love with storytelling?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I apologize for the technical difficulties. For me, I fell in love with storytelling when I knew I had the gift to tell a story, whether it's through lived experience or whether it's through creative storytelling. Bridging the gap from healthcare, which I do as my career, to storytelling and getting others to see a different perspective that differs from them is something that for a year now have been really intentionally trying to bring to community. Um, I realized that I had a gift for it when I constructed my first play because I my brain works differently through the stuff that I've been through, the trials and tribulations, through things I've had to overcome. I'm able to create such vivid worlds, vivid characters that people can see themselves in. Not only do I tell these stories, I tell them authentically and through a perspective of my lived experience. So just mirroring all that and bridging those two gaps, I feel like is important. And I believe that we all have the gift. We all have the gift, but I am learning to hone in on mine and the power that my gift can have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I like how you talk about having like power in your storytelling and the gift that it brings. And a lot of times, again, as I stated before, it's about being open and vulnerable and having some element of truth. So I want to pose this question to the group. And I know some of you all touched on it a bit, but Honestly, how brave do you have to be to live in your truth? And what has that journey taught you about the importance of sharing your story? Is it all bravery? Is some scary? Like, what does that look like from your experiences? And anybody can go first.
I'll go. I think that I really like how you worded that question, to live in your truth. For the a lot of us, a lot of people, we are existing in our truth. And I feel that when you learn to live in that truth, when you learn to fill up rooms and spaces that you never even imagined yourself being in, and go into those spaces unapologetically and with purpose and with intentionality, that is when you really start to live in that truth. For me, my journey was a little bit different. From diagnosis, I realized that what happened to me when I got diagnosed was not good. It was not healthy mentally or physically. I was in a room full of a whole bunch of providers who were like, "Oh, we're training. Let us, we haven't done this before, so now we're gonna use you as the example." And I was like, "Is this what healthcare is?" So in that moment, I realized I needed to do something. I just didn't know what it was until I met my mentor, who was like, "No, you should be in healthcare." And I often say, a lot of my bios or a lot of the talks I do, I strive to put the care back into healthcare, because what happened to me was unfortunate, but I really wanted to make sure that it doesn't or won't happen to others. So I knew I had to go into HIV prevention, HIV treatment, and now research, because I wanted to live in that. I wanted to live and not just exist in that. So that's why I really like how you own that, you said that question, because it's us living in our purpose and us living authentically. We deserve it. And through the stories I tell, I want others to know that, you can be unapologetic, and you can live in that truth. You don't just have to exist in it.
I
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved what you just said. I want to say the converse too, because I think that's important. It's because I didn't come out of power. My story didn't come from power. It came from sheer rage and anger and fear. I was devastated when I was told was diagnosed with HIV in 1990. Devastated. I have come to a place where you are, Kimberly, thank goodness. But I've been, it's over 36 years. So I will say that creative expression has been central to my own healing, that the courage and the bravery I had came out of the sense of helplessness and powerlessness. But it was in that, my realizing that nobody was coming to get me. There was nobody coming to get me unless I opened my mouth and said I needed help. And for me, that was my first step in life, because I had been so defined by what it means to be a strong Black woman, and that you handle things on your own. And that's where your power comes from. But what happens when your power is gone? When there's nothing less for you to to grab onto? That's when you have to kind of take a risk, take a chance, open your mouth, because as they say, when you don't open your mouth, closed mouths don't get fed. So I had to reach out and hope that somebody heard me and was willing to hear my journey. And over time, my story changed. In the beginning, it was a story of fear and secrecy and survival, as I've said to you. But now it has become a question of, what do I leave for women who are coming behind me, so that their journey is mapped out a little bit in a way that they can do, as Kimberly and other my colleagues on the line are saying, can define what it means for them to be powerful.
For
Yeah,
me,
thank you for saying that. I agree.
Yeah, I think someone was saying
Yeah,
something.
Latoya, go ahead.
following up on what Miss Vanessa said, my experience was when I first found out wasn't positive either. I was actually outed in front of my mother in the doctor's office, or while I was in the hospital. But at the same time, it's a good thing she was there, because when I broke and had that breakdown, she grabbed me, wrapped me in her arms. We're gonna get through this. And that's what gives me the strength to go every day, to keep telling my story. And also, the first time I ever spoke out was about a year later, which is 2019. My pastor had me put on my first World AIDS event. So I called in people from different areas. I had someone that spoke about their experience. I had someone from the health department. I had someone to do finance. But as I was sitting there recording the conversation, a message came through from my mom on text message. Tell your story and set yourself free. So I looked at my pastor, I talked to him about it. He got up and introduced me. And by the time I finished talking, everybody was quiet. But then they created a line and came up to me and hugged me. We knew you were sick, but we didn't know what it was. How can we help you? So that's how my experience. That's how I got into being a voice for other people, because it's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity,
Yeah.
that support.
Now this is beautiful. Like you said, just expressing and disclosing it for yourself. And I know that we had a comment come in that says disclosure is your liberation, not a cross for someone else to bear. And I thank you so much, James Baldwin Wins Lives Within, because Vanessa, you hinted on it so perfectly about being a Black woman. And I also want to take this step further, being a Black woman of cis and trans experience. And we often have this stereotype about ourselves. We have to be a strong Black woman. We have to do all of those things. And like you said, Vanessa, like, I don't want to be strong today. My story was built on pain, rage, frustration. Kimberly, you in this setting where it's like, okay, you training like you almost a training ground. Like, how does that make sense? Latoya, you've
Mhm.
been out of like, how does that make sense? And one thing's for certain, two things for sure, it's nothing like a mother's love. So when we come down and when we talk about storytelling, I know this is kind of segueing into something else, but how does the foundation of each of you all's story contribute to the plot twist? So, what I mean by that is you start your story out in rage, in fear, in anger, but then along the way, your story shifts. What does that shift in storytelling look like? And how do you make sure that narrative turns out to be positive and not negative based upon the circumstances you were at that time and how you are now?
That is an excellent question.
Really?
I for me, and this is Vanessa again, I think for Black women living with HIV and other chronic health conditions, including realities that come with aging, creative expression is necessary to healing. It is one of the ways we fight the weight of our diagnosis, transform what we know as women into wisdom, and then turn our private pain into collective power. Everything I do now, and I didn't even know when I first opened my mouth, I kind of intuitively knew, but didn't, is to change what is today, that this does not have to be our present. It doesn't have to be our future. And it is our stories that will fuel our inspiration and motivation to create that change. Because as is noted in the quote, no one came to get me. No one's coming to get us now, as you can hear in the political environment. And so we are going to have to be the ones that save ourselves and save our community. And I think that's when we show women the power of that story. I mean, it's like Angela Milo with Phenomenal Woman. Every woman that hears that understands that.
Thank
So,
you. So yeah,
I thought that was beautifully said. I do want to say thank you because I thought that was beautifully said. I also want to say thank you for the question. I have a two-part answer. My first part is when I write truth. And people who know me, and I've shared this with, the women on this panel in our meeting prior, is everything I do is a love letter to Black cis women, Black biological women. I am a Black trans woman. My intersections are of Black transness, womanness, being with lived experience, et cetera, et cetera. But everything I do is a love letter to Black, cis, or biological women, whatever term fits you. And I have to tell that story authentically and true and pure and know that, without, you know, vaginas, there would be no penises. That being said, I like to create from a very authentic but true place. Moving on to the second part of the question. Sometimes those stories don't have happy endings. Sometimes
Yeah.
the life we're living, i.e., now, does not have a happy ending. And it's all about how you construct that story or how you tell that story. That, a good story doesn't have to end in happiness. A good story does not have to end in happiness. And there are many of my writings that don't, but they end in truth. They end in vulnerability. They end in authenticity. And I'm very intentional about that. I would love for the story to have a happy ending. And, I wrote a love story, which is a very real love story for people who have had that experience. But it does not end happily because that is true. And it's all about perspective. For some, maybe the story did end happily. For others, it just ended how it ended. And that is the God's honest truth. And I think I will always create from that space. There will always be the intention to tell the story, whatever that story may be, regardless of how the ending is. And
Agree.
for some of us, not to cut anyone off, for some of us, that story still being written for trans women, especially ones of color. I have not seen a happy ending yet. When I see one, I'll be able to know the perspective and I'll be able to create a happy ending. But right now, we get what we get because I personally, and I've been trans for a long time before it was, mainstream. And I have yet to see a happy ending. So therefore, I cannot create one unless it's fantasy. And then that's a whole different story.
Thank you. Latoya?
For me, my third book is called Forever Changed, and it was written after I got my HIV diagnosis. And I go from the pain of not wanting to live, feeling like I had died when I got the original diagnosis, to moving into, okay, acceptance. I'm created for a purpose. I have to be that voice for those, again, a voice for those that cannot speak for themselves. Let people know that it's not a death sentence. There is life after a diagnosis. So my motto is, even through the storm, purpose still speaks.
Mm.
That is great. I love that aspect how you said purpose still speaks even through the storm. And since we're on you, Latoya, much of your work centers sharing your lived experience through writing, podcasting, and community work. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how has storytelling supported your own healing journey while also helping others feel less alone?
It has give me the chance to be authentic. It's given me the chance to tell my story the way I want to tell it. So no one, cause no one can tell my story like I can. It's given me an opportunity to be in rooms that I never imagined I'd be able to be in. Like Miss Vanessa, I consider her my mentor because she always speaks life into you when she's talking to you. So I've never told her, but a lot of those times, just saying "How are you doing" helps me get through those hard days. And as far as selling it for other people, like with the podcast, we all have a story, and we also wear different hats. But a lot of times we can't combine our story into one. We have to tell it different ways in different situations. So when they come on the podcast, you don't have to do that. You can wear all those stories. You can wear all those hats. You can be you. You're not judged, and it's just your chance to be open.
I love that. Especially the power of telling your story, or let me say this, altering your story in a way that is still authentic and true within itself. But there's one thing that I know, like you can't be, a pastor trying to preach something to an audience that may not receive it. And you can't be somebody that's just so laissez-faire and you're trying to go into like a corporate space or whatever. So I completely understand how you have to be intentional about telling your story so that it hits individuals and they're able to understand it and they're able to say, okay, like this is what I need to hear, especially through your podcast. And another thing that I want to, ask you is like, what is some advice you would give to someone who is still trying to find the courage to tell their own story, especially out and open and being brave?
One, make sure you have a strong support system, and make sure you're not just telling your story because someone is telling you have to. Make sure it's what you want to do, because your story is yours, it's not everybody else's. And some people may not find that space that, okay, I'm gonna be out open, and that's okay. You don't have to be open, but accept how you feel. Know it's okay for you to feel how you feel, and let's go from there.
Thank you.
Can I
I definitely.
piggyback off of that real quick? Because I love that. One thing I would like to add is make sure you're not telling your story because it's a part of your job and you're getting paid for it, or
Mhm.
because it's through an organization that is benefiting off of your story. Because lots of times when that happens, you won't have the protection you should have once you're putting yourself out there for, you know, your job. So I would just want to add that little anecdote is just make sure you're not doing it because it's a part of your job and an organization is pushing you to tell that story.
Now I'm happy you added that, Kimberly. Vanessa, were you about to say something? You can.
Mm-mm.
Okay. I'm happy that you touched on that, Vanessa. And I'm going to open up this question for everybody. When it comes down to, narratives, when it comes down to media, when it comes down to storytelling, a lot of times we understand that the narrative is perpetuated based upon the majority. It's based upon what needs to be seen or what should be seen, and not really showing what the truth is. With that being said, you have individuals who, again, like I asked you, Latoya, who want to share their story, but they may be scared to. What is the power in being able to not only contribute to the story, but also being able to shift the narrative of the story when it comes down to living with HIV, and not only living with HIV, but thriving with HIV?
For me, it gave me the opportunity to be free, which means that being HIV positive no longer held me down. It no longer took over my life. It's just another condition that I have. And like I said, it's not easy telling your story. Or like I said again, for me, I just knew that in order for me to have my healing, I had to be open and I had to be honest. And through that, I gained another community that is not my family, my blood family, but I have people in that new community that I'm just as close to as I am with my parents and my brother. So,
That's excellent. I just listening. I just been listening. That's why I haven't really been commenting. And what Kimberly and Latoya have said have profoundly impacted me in the sense that uh, they're absolutely right. There's a story for everybody, and everybody has a story. And then that's where we identify with one another. So that's just our visual. It is not just the audio. It is when we speak and we can say, yeah, I know that experience. That's when folks can decide how far they're going to go. They can decide if this is a method of healing for them. And I'm going to talk about healing for a moment and suggest that we as Black women, trans women, and cisgender women have to fight for storytelling, narrative changing interventions. That is who we are as a people. Our ancestry is built on oral storytelling. And then we've expanded it to other forms of expression. But until we tell folks, and we have been, that goes back to Kimberly's point about being paid. There is no reason why any woman should be telling their story without the option or the choice of being compensated. That is rude. That is not being done. And it is up to us, the ones who have taken that step out there, to ensure that every woman that comes behind us is with us now and will come in the future, has the opportunity, the choice to say no, the choice to say how they will do it and when and where they will do it. We have to create policy change for ourselves as a community on the national level, on our local level, and how our community based organizations treat us. We can no longer go into this with, well, maybe I will. No, you will, or you won't get my story.
Absolutely. Kimberly?
Oh, yes, that actually hit me in my feels. I'm not gonna lie, because it's everything you said is exactly to a T. I will say the conversation about folks or women who are thriving, I think we need to do a better job and ask those people, are they thriving? Because for the majority of my, lived experience, being, the catalyst to help, set for change, I never saw myself as thriving. I saw myself as surviving. It wasn't, and I've been doing this work for 9 years, and I will say it wasn't until the last 2, 3 years where I felt like I was thriving. I felt the majority of it was just me surviving and doing, the things that I felt I had to do, not just for myself, but for community, for the people after me. And it never felt like a thrive until I started going into those rooms, taking up that space, using my voice, and seeing the impact of that. And also telling my stories, creating stories, the magnitude of which my story impacted individuals is then I stepped back and said, okay, now I'm thriving. Now this feels like thriving. But before that, I just felt like I was on autopilot. I felt like I was the Black trans woman that would just go and do the work and say the things and get the feedback. And, so much so is when I first when I first got my first ever play read, they read my play in New York. The feedback, it was, standing ovation. The feedback was amazing. I went and hid in the bathroom because it just felt foreign to me that people kept coming up to me and talking to me, because it had happened so many times before for a paycheck, or because it was my job's obligation, or because it was me, being in the room and doing the things for other people, that when it was genuine and when it was just something that I had created without, having to do it, it felt foreign to me. And I think that we need more stories. We need more people. We need more people in community to create these stories and hone in on that power and empower. Because at the time where I should have been like, yes, this is me, I wrote that, thank you for having it, it didn't feel right, because I had been, you know, I don't want to say had been abused, but I had been you throwing my story out there for so long that it just felt different when it was actually my story and not just something I was doing because it was part of the job, if that makes
I
sense.
hear you. I'm sensing you really felt like you made a choice, like that was really your choice to do that at that point
Correct.
in time.
Correct. The other times I felt like I had very little, autonomy in telling that story or my story. It felt like, well, you're good at this, or your voice is golden, or this is going to bring change, which it did, and I'm very grateful for all the opportunities I did. But the one time I was intentional, I was purposeful, I created a story. I didn't know how to receive the feedback because I had been used to, doing it not without my will, because I did these things, but just doing it because it was normalized that you are this person of lived experience and your story is what will be beneficial to A, B, or C organization. So,
Can I just add on to that, if you don't mind, Latoya? Shukriya. I would add on to that. I love the way you said that because the choice led you down one path. I will say that storytelling provides women with the opportunity to make different decisions in life. Like some of the stories that have come out of Common Thread, some folks are now executive directors, some folks are authors, some folks like Latoya, some folks are podcasters, like all of you two. And I think of my colleague at Ribbon, Linda H. Scruggs, who was my first storyteller, believe it or not, 20 years ago or 30 years, I don't, too long ago. But just hearing that story and the power from her ability to get it out was life changing for me in the sense that I really could be comfortable in my own skin saying out loud that I'm a woman living with HIV. So has my story evolved from then? Yes, then. Yes, it has. Have I seen other women evolve and thrive? Yes. But I also think we have to be mindful of what Kimberly and Latoya are saying is that we have to tell the whole story. Because sometimes folks, when they believe they have arrived, that folks think that, well, now you can't have pain, you can't be sad, you can't live a full life as a human being. That we have these expectations of each other, that our narratives also have to change. We have to allow each of us to heal in the open with each other, so that we can move on and bring other women with us.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
agree.
This is super, super helpful. And Vanessa, I want to turn to you because, you mentioned about, at Ribbon. So I know for you, your work constantly centers like healing, community building, and the power of lived experience. So at Ribbon, you've helped develop innovative programs like Common Threads, which explores the interconnectedness of lived experience, trauma, and vulnerability. I'm sorry, y'all. This is my daughter. So, with
Mhm.
that being said, what inspired this work and what have participants taught you about the power of storytelling as a healing practice, especially when it comes down to ribbon and common threads?
That, oh, wow. So I'm going to talk about in terms of legacy. Like I said, it's been very central to my own healing, and over time, my story has changed. But now it's really becoming a story of legacy. What do I really want to say to people? What do I want to leave behind? What do I want to leave for my son, my adult son, my nieces and nephews, my entire family? And so I'm asking different questions now. Now I'm in the phase of my life, because I'm aging with HIV, is what do I want to pass on? What do I refuse to leave behind? What wisdom do younger generations need from me? And what do I need from them to be able to let go and trust in their leadership? Because that's something I'm dealing with right now. And how do we make sure that Black women, including Black trans women, are not only included in the story of HIV, but recognized as the authors, the leaders, the artists, and the architects of the future? My relationship with my story has evolved from secrecy to survival, to advocacy, and now, like I said, to legacy. So I see my story as part of the broader intergenerational responsibility to tell the truth, preserve wisdom, and create conditions where other women, such as myself, other men and women, do not have to fight the same battles, or at least fight different battles, or at least finish the battles we started. Okay. Um,
Not absolutely. Anybody else want to chime in?
and I
I think
think
as an advocate, the so I when I was going through my playwriting cohort, which I'm so grateful for, I was intentional about I wanted any piece of work that I create to be authored by KJ Skeet, which is my initials, Kimberly June, because I wanted it to be separate from my nursing, my research, my work as an advocate. I wanted this for me because I believe in my writing, I believe in my voice as it pertains to playwriting, script writing, etc. I needed for myself to make that distinction because so much of my work, of my career, which again I'm grateful for, has been around my lived experience. And this is something I wanted. There's a difference because the advocate's going to always be at me, whether I'm creating a story, a creative story, or whether I'm telling my own story, the advocate's there. But I can separate the two. I can be intentional about this is for me. This is writing for me that I want to do. There's work, there's story that I need to tell, there's story that I might have to tell, and then there's story that I want to tell. And the stories that I want to tell are all from KJ Skeet because I want to create this. I want to be intentional about this.
Great.
I'm gonna be an advocate through and through because it's who I am. You want to be the voice of the people, you want to help the community, you want to do the work, blah 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 blah. And if you're good at it, but again, I will say there's the stories that I want to tell, there's the stories that I have to tell, and there's the stories that I need to tell. Right now, my storytelling are the stories that I want to tell intentionally, and I'm being very intentional about separating the Kimberly June ski to the KJ ski, and that's why I authored my creative work KJ.
That is great. That is a great strategy. Thank you.
No, this is super helpful. Thank you, ladies, so much. And I know, Vanessa, you talked about like legacy, and that kind of ties into like generational. So I want to ask you all, what does storytelling looks like across generations? So you have like the 80s, and then you have the 90s, and then now, of course, we're in like the 2000s. So what does storytelling looks like across generations, and how do those generations have the ability to connect without losing the essence of what the story is about?
I just got a brainstorm when you asked that question based on what I just heard. I like it as a relay. Like if we this example, we used us as a test pilot study and added some other women, and we would have women, a woman start at the age of 20 who's diagnosed with HIV, or maybe is a dandelion and was born with HIV. They start telling the story, and as the different ages, another woman steps in and continues that story until we get to the logical conclusion. So it's a line of storytelling, because that's how I see storytelling amongst us as Black women. Our voices are distinct, but they also blend. So why can't I would love Kimberly, that's your charge. You have to do that visualization for us, please. Thank you. Very lovely. I would love to see something like that. That I think would be very powerful, where we're just blended and distinct at the same time. I can't, that's just one way of doing it.
Mhm.
But that
That's
builds community, and that lets us know that we are community, and that our stories are more than just the records that happen to us. They are blueprints for what we are trying to build. It's the roadmap. Because, at certain points in your life, there were lives in your story. You're like, I don't know how I got here. How come nobody told me this piece? But this is an opportunity for us to say, if you're not really sure what's going to be happening as you approach your 30s and 40s, these are the things that might happen as you're listening to the stories.
absolutely. Anybody else want to jump in?
Absolutely. A few things. I do believe, as a new writer myself, I've only been writing for 2 years now. Well, I've been writing, but I've only been creative writing and script writing for 2 years now. I believe you have to know the stories that came before yours and do your homework. I do see a lot of, I just had a birthday last week, so I can say the kids now because I'm older now. So I feel like the kids sometimes forget to do their homework and forget that there's writing that has, come before theirs. So I think this to pay homage to legacy, to the past, is a good way to start. But also realizing that a lot of those stories, or most of sometimes, often those stories were told by not us. We need to, add us into it. There should be stories for us, by us. And I believe that bringing more people into the fold to tell these stories authentically, is how we kind of can bridge that gap. But also, just don't forget that there are stories there, or, before you picked up the pen or started to type, there was someone who did it before you. And knowing those stories, or knowing that legacy, as we speak of, would really benefit you. Before I, create anything, I know where the foundation is coming from. I know where the blueprint lies. And that's just the type of writer, the type of person, the type of human I am, is I know that there was someone that came before me. And in order to do the best I could do, I have to know what has already been done.
Mm,
Absolutely. I love that. Latoya, did you want to add?
mm,
For me, I just created another segment under my podcast, which is Thoughtful Thursday. So I have two other ladies that are coming on with me. We're all in different locations. We are all diagnosed at different times. You have someone that was back when it was first coming out. Then you have someone that was middle, and then you have me that's only been 8 years. So what I tell them is, yes, this is my podcast. However, it's not about me. We are all a team. We all have a story to tell. I give you an outline. You go from there and you tell the story the way you want to. So, and I need all three of y'all to be on my podcast. Thank you.
I do. I mean, that's the way you do it, though. That's the way you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the analogy of like the relay race, Vanessa, that you gave. And I definitely agree with that. And a lot of times, because we talk about, generations, we talk about legacy, but then we also have to understand a lot of history has been erased. And so though we can't go back in the past, a lot of times we're trying to like scratch and see, okay, like where's the history, where's the story, like I need to know. And a lot of times we need to understand it, and we need to know that to be able to know that there is hope. Like somebody has done it before me, and it's not easy, it's not something that's going to be, peaches and rainbows. But if somebody can do it, if my fellow, woman who is of the same experience that I am can overcome it, then I can overcome it too. And our experiences may be different, but the outcome is similar. And it just gives me like a rainbow amidst the clouds, so to speak. And I know with you, Kimberly, like I know your work spans with advocacy, health care, and especially creative writing. With that being said, what can, from your perspective, storytelling and performance communicate about people's experiences that data, research, and traditional public health messaging often cannot or even miss?
Mm.
Well, I usually say science in the clinical setting will tell you the data, and the lived experience will tell you the human side of it. It'll humanize it. It'll show you how this operates under the guise of empathy, under the guise of being real. And I think that you might not be able to walk in someone's shoes, but you
Mhm.
can be empathetic to the journey. You can, if you want to have, if you have a heart, you can. And there are some people, we won't talk about the administration, but you can learn, or you can hear a different perspective that differs from yours and feel something from it. You don't even have to be moved by it, but you can feel something. And I think blending those two will bridge the gap between science, clinical data, and lived experience. I often feel that people with lived experiences are often left out of healthcare settings, and that's unfortunate. Because I think that's how you get the community, that's how you get patient retention, that's how you get people to show up to their appointments when they can relate to someone that looks like them, talks like them, has an experience that is similar to theirs. They're more than likely going to show up to that appointment, stay into healthcare and engage in it. And I have, you know, been proof of that for many years now. And I think bringing more people of lived experiences into the fold is how we bridge that gap. And I do think we could do a better job at that. But it also takes, those people in those positions to advocate for it, to be able to pass the mic to someone who, you know, should speak on these topics. I have been fortunate to have amazing mentors who have, instead of talking about trans issues or issues pertaining to HIV, they allow someone who actually have that lived experience to talk about them, because you're going to get a different perspective. You're going to get the real. Real is what I call it.
Absolutely. I'm definitely happy that, you shared that. And we're living in a space now, of course, with like the political climate, the whole topic, which is now almost becoming like taboo of hush hush, is diversity, equity, and especially when it comes down to inclusion. So when it comes down to that and almost the erasure of DEI, how important, and anybody can answer this, how important is it to make sure that diversity, especially among cis or trans women of lived experience, is being shown in the media or social media, or just how important is it to be shown out there? Because every story is different, every person is different. So Black women is not a monolith. So how important is it to make sure that diversity is shown up unapologetically?
I can start because and I've said this earlier, everything I do, my being, when I wake up in the morning, is a love letter to Black cis women because for me, they are the foundation. And I will never forget that without vaginas, there would be no penises. Sorry for my language if that offends anyone. You can be a gold star gay, but without a vagina, there would be no dick. And we need to remember that. I think to answer the question, it starts with us first in solidarity. I There has been discourse online for the last few months between Black cis women and Black trans women. And if you are a Black cis woman and you are an ally or a supporter of a Black trans woman, acknowledge that. Because then other Black cis women will be like, huh, well, if she thinks they're okay, maybe I should think they're okay. And I don't think enough of us do that. I personally feel Black women are going to heal the world. If, like, I feel that if they just listen to more Black women, we wouldn't be in the crazy stuff we're in. However, it needs to start with us. The solidarity starts with us. If Black folks all were in solidarity, we would be unstoppable, no shade. But we need to start with us first. And if you, again, are an ally, realize that that shit is a verb and not a noun. Put that into action. Show up and show out is what I say. So, again, to answer your question, it starts with us first. If you are in solidarity with, a Black trans woman or a cis trans woman, show that, represent that, because then when people see it, each one teach one. So, yeah.
I agree. I agree, and I love the solidarity. I think we have an opportunity if we speak in shared truth
Mm.
and not in sameness. Cisgender and transgender Black women do not have identical experiences. We don't. But we understand what it means to fight for safety, dignity, bodily autonomy, and recognition. Solidarity stops, excuse me, when we stop treating one another as competition
Mm.
for visibility and start seeing each other as essential to my survival, my thriving, and my future. For too long, the world has tried to draw boundaries around our sisterhood, treating women like a scarce resource that must be guarded. But what trans women have shown me, I'm talking about me personally, is that womanhood is not a gated community. It is infinite and it is expansive. So what we need is to continue growing together as parts of the community of women. We need space to have honest conversations. Online is fine, but a lot of us are not communicating online. We're communicating in different ways, and we have to figure out how to use those platforms so that we can continue to have these conversations that allow us to be in spaces together where we can listen with humility and love and to understand that Black womanhood is not diminished by the existence of either gender identity. Instead, it is expanded by truth, courage, and self determination. We can only be free when all of us are free.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, Toya, do you have anything you want to add? Oh, listen, that's
Well,
completely fine. And
Miss Vanessa closed it out.
listen, I love it. And before, because I know we're nearing the time, and I want to ask another question before we kind of wrap it up. And this is kind of like fun, but at the same time, I feel like when you have questions like this, it kind of gives people more of an insight of who you are. So, with each of you, if you had to title your story, what would it be, and briefly why?
Okay, I'll go because this is the first thing that came. This is the first thing that came to my mind. Self-titled. Fuck resilience. I had no choice.
It was going somewhere near there.
You can elaborate a little bit, Kimberly.
I feel like Black women, we are. we're taught to be resilient. We're taught to persevere. And we're like, lots of time. I was going through some shit recently, and a lot of the comments were, "You're the toughest person I know." Oh, I'm trying not to get emotional. "You're the toughest person I know," or like, "You're gonna get through this," and blah blah blah. If anyone can get through it, you can. And it's like sometimes I don't want to.
Right.
Sometimes I don't want to be the toughest person in the room. Like I have persevered because I had no fucking choice. Ooh, sorry. I have had no choice because for some of us, it's either shit or get off the pot. You either persevere or resilient, or you have an alternative option that we don't talk about. So, like, I love life. I love living. I want to explore. I want to grow. I want to evolve. So, what did I have to do? Persevere and be resilient.
I love that. Latoya and Vanessa, anyone can go next.
There are so many titles going. Latoya, did you want to go?
I would say she led with power.
Mm.
To piggyback off of what Kimberly said, um, I've had so many people in the last few weeks like, "Oh, you're a trooper. Um, you stronger than you think it is. What about your faith? You don't look sick. You look well put together." I said, "Well, thank you." But this strong person that you see, I believe just like you do. I cry just like you do. So if you're getting inspired by that, that's fine. But please don't tell me I need to be a trooper because today is not the day I want to be a trooper. I like I said, I hurt just like you do. So uh,
Mm,
I like them
Vanessa.
both. I would say chaotic beauty. A lot of my
Mm.
life has been very chaotic, but I have created something I actually am proud of. So chaotic beauty, and I want to say this, that Black women living with HIV are not waiting for permission. My other title was, "No, I'm not waiting for permission. I'm gonna be polite, but I'm not waiting for permission."
mm,
And I say that because we are already doing this. Look at what the three of us have said with you,
mhm,
Miss Davis, and with AU and the Mellon Project. What Black women are doing right now. We're not waiting for permission to join the future. We're already shaping it. Our stories, our care, our advocacy, our memories, our love. So I'm going to go with chaos. Yeah, chaos.
Okay, now listen. So, okay, you all gave your titles. And so, I mean, I'm assuming like an autobiography or something. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there in the atmosphere, a podcast episode, a playwright, whatever the case may be. Like, this is it. And I added that question because, again, it speaks to a lot. And a lot of times we hear the notion like you can never judge a book by its cover, but also, too, the cover or the title can give you some context. And I feel like every woman, every panelist on here has shared their sentiments when it comes down to storytelling, when it comes down to advocacy, when it comes down to legacy building. And I know for me, like sitting here as a Black cisgendered woman, like it's paramount that we continue to have these conversations. And of course, I had an additional host to come join me, my daughter right here, who is 2. But I think it sheds lights to, okay, as she gets older, like my mom was a part of conversations with women who were able to unapologetically share their stories, whether they were brave, whether they were scared, courageous, whatever the case may be. So I think that magnitude to Black women, that love letter to, cisgender Black women, but as well as trans Black women, like it just expresses so much of a magnitude. And I want to acknowledge a comment that came in when we were talking about monetization when it comes down to telling your story. And someone said like someone contacted them to check if they were interested in sharing their HIV lived experience. They have a huge project money, but they don't want to compensate us. No way our stories are worthy. And absolutely, like
mhm,
everybody's story is worthy,
yeah,
everybody's heart, everybody's passion. What I'm telling you, like this is exclusive information, and you think you just gonna come get it and piece it by piece. Listen, it's only one me. It's only one you. It's only one person. It's only and one thing that I can say, and I'm passionate about this before we really close out. I'm a firm believer that we were not created to just to have a squeaky clean life. And I feel that everybody has a story to tell and to share. And I do agree that we're not all born or called or created or however you see fit to have a squeaky clean life, but it's what you do with that life. Are you going to hide behind the shadows? Or are you going to be like, you know what, whether I feel good today or not, I can be, my story can be, my legacy can be something that helps the next person, whether I know them in this lifetime or not. So I just want to say to like the panelists here, I just thank you ladies so much for being open, for being vulnerable, for being transparent and being visible when it comes down to telling your story, the impact of your organizations, your podcast, and what does that look like for other individuals to be able to want to tell their story, especially when we have these voices in motion. And one thing again that I want to do is just again thank you for sharing your wisdom and experiences. And of course, today's conversation reminds us that stories do more than raise awareness. They build connection, challenge stigma, shape culture, and inspire change. Whether through writing, advocacy, art, or community leadership, storytelling remains one of our most powerful tools for creating visibility and advancing justice. And I do want to thank Melanated Movement, ACE United, our panelists, and everyone who joined us today. We hope this conversation inspires you to think about the power of your own story and the role it can play in creating healthier, more connecting connection communities. And before we, close out, I want to give you all, how can individuals find you? Where are you located?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook under I am Toya Quiet Storm.
Email at vjohnson at ribbon, RIBBON 3.org. I am not on social media. I'm trying to save myself.
The best place to find me is my LinkedIn, and it's Kimberly June Skeet. That's Kimberly, the month June, Skeet, Skeete. You can find me. I'm all over. So if you're interested in my work, it's KJ Skeet, like I said, but that's also on my LinkedIn. But also just thank you, Melanated Movement. Thank you, Age United. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, our
Thank
beautiful, lovely
you.
moderator. I love the questions from our moderator. Just thankful to take space with you all today.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. And to everyone that's listening online or will receive the recording, please continue to engage with us online and enjoy the rest of your day.